out there. I am your host. That's right, Jessica Koch, back again for another Profound Professionals interview series. I have been bringing for almost 8 years now, you brilliant and amazing individuals from all over the world. These industry experts help you improve your personal life and grow your business. Today, I am not going to disappoint you with the very wonderful and amazing, and yes, so happy that Ken is now smiling, Ken and Maris. They are speakers and authors of 22. Yes, you're hearing it right. 22 best-selling books they have been involved in. And I can't wait for us to get to that part of the show later on so that we can learn more about that. They're also executive and relationship leadership coaches. So they're really going to help you with all your different interrelationships so that as a company, you can really shine, and people who need to be communicated with in certain manners will be receiving that communication, and then your team can just sing together and people are so much happier and so much more fulfilled. So tell us all about this amazing journey that you've been on, Ken and Maris.
Well, first off, I would just say, Jessica, so great to be with you this afternoon and be with all your friends out there watching. And we're just so happy to be here with you.
Well, we're glad to have you.
And what I would say is, first and foremost, be who you are, right? I mean, right? So that's just, and it's one of the things we loved about you when we first started to talk to you is just this energy and just, right, it just started to flow. So we appreciate that. So we look forward to this conversation. And now, what was your question? What did you want us to answer?
So how did you begin the journey of executive and relational and leadership coaching and training and support? Because truly, no matter whether you're talking about a couple or a team or, you know, anyone, a mother or a parent, everyone is a leader in some capacity. Someone is following you. And so we really all want to be the best versions of ourselves so that we can have that ripple effect, because that's what true leadership means. It means this ripple effect of joy, of prosperity, of how you leave people feeling. That's the true definition of leadership, is that you're making a difference that impacts in mass ripples, and you're leaving people feeling really good about themselves.
Great. Good segue.
Great segue. So Maris and I have been together for 20 plus years. And during that time period, we've had the amazing opportunity to work with huge corporations, celebrities around the world. I would say 3 presidents, both sides, 2 popes, and all in an effort to create something that sparked and engaged an audience, whatever audience was that those particular entities were looking for. And it was all about relationships. And then we've been doing that for years and years. And then the pandemic pause hit. And what happened? I'm looking at you.
Oh, that's a good question. So the work that Ken is talking about is that really over the course of probably 30 or 40 years between us, we had actually been on the road, and our work was focused on establishing relationships with causes, issues, programs, all types of things to be able to move a product, a mountain, whatever it was. And what we learned really early on in establishing those relationships is that without them, we couldn't survive, right? And so over the era that Ken and I were together, people also would constantly say to us, wait, hang on. How does this relationship thing work? You work together 24/7. You look like you still really like each other 24/7, and you still have this personal life. So how does all that work? So for us, we had always known that there was this rhythm. And we said, you know what? This is interesting. Relationships have a rhythm. We looked at our client relationships. We look at where they were prospering and thriving, and we realized there's a rhythm. So we started to connect, because Ken's also a singer-songwriter, and tune in to say, okay, hang on. If there's a rhythm and a flow between us, and there's a rhythm and a flow that works in these relationships, are there key rhythms that work in every relationship, personally and professionally? And so we set out on a little bit of an expedition of discovery. And between us, we identified 4 key rhythms that we know works. And when one of them is out of sync, something's not working. We know about that. So you want to tell us what they are?
Well, we can get into that later on, but the 4 key relationship rhythms, and we write about this in our book: respect, responsibility, reframing, and resilience. You can't have a relationship without respect. In a relationship, there's always responsibility on both sides, or multiple sides if you have a team. And reframing is always a powerful tool to change your perspective and look at things from maybe the other person's perspective, or from a totally different perspective for both of you. And then, of course, every relationship goes through ups and downs, and that's where resilience comes into play. So those are the 4 key universal rhythms.
That's really, really interesting. The reframe makes me think of, and I have great respect for my husband, so I don't want this to come across the wrong way, but in our early days, he without help from me, he didn't always know the best way to communicate something to me. And that's true to how my kids were as well. Of course, growing up, they're still learning what's the right and appropriate way to communicate things that they're feeling, frustrations or things that they want or desire. And I would often say, oh, what I think you mean to say is, and restate it for them in a way that I was literally training them how to better communicate to me to actually receive what they wanted. Instead of yelling at them for it or demeaning them or whatever, basically I was trying to restate what it is they desired, but in a way that was more receivable for me to hear it, you know?
Because, you know, look, I mean, we all have had parents who have come across in a certain way, or sometimes may not come across in a certain way. And I was constantly hearing my mother say, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. Because my dad was this tough, big, strong guy, and I was constantly afraid of him. And my mother was this kind of softer voice, but much more strong in coming across with a more subtle approach. And they yelled at each other at the top of their lungs. So I grew up in a house where they yelled at each other all the time. So, and I knew they loved each other, but I also never saw them make up or apologize to each other. So now start to see the patterns that I'm learning about what communication is safe, is not safe, right? So what's interesting about these 4 R's is that what we realized was that what worked for us, now we put it out there, and we asked our celebrity clients, our Olympic athletes, moms in classrooms, guys at the post office, heads of state, governors. We basically pulled kind of everybody and did this anecdotal study. And the fact is, these are the 4 that show up for everybody that works or doesn't work. And so as you start to look at them, you say, okay, respect. Here's the thing about respect. And it all starts first with the most important relationship. Yes, outside of God, outside of the universe, bar none. We have one life to live, one body and one planet. And the one relationship you can't leave home without, that is your most important relationship, is you.
Yourself, yeah.
It's the one with yourself. And so if we don't respect ourselves first, stand responsibility for the things we're telling ourselves in our heads, right? Reframe how we're communicating with ourselves.
With ourselves,
right?
Yeah.
That's, I mean, that it starts first. It's an inside out job. So us now bringing that to the forefront with our book, The RFactor, our TEDx talk is also about the 4 R's. And really all the work we've been doing centers on what does it take to build a team at home and work, and to build the bridge between them so that there's this solid connection of integration versus an over here and an over there. And that takes communication and all these pieces to be able to then have everybody feel valued, right? Connected, heard. All of a sudden, we have a different thriving environment at home and at work. Funny thing. you know.
Well, and it's not just heard, but it's also cared for. So communication is that they need to know you care, whether it's your employee or your boss or your kid or your spouse or your neighbor. If they don't think you care, then you don't have their buy-in for whatever it is that you're trying to communicate with them. So you definitely have to care.
Yes, I mean, part of that and part of caring begins with communication. So when you think about it, a lot of times we'll all have a conversation, and instead of really listening and being present to that person, we're kind of in the back of our minds thinking of what we're going to say next. Now, that doesn't apply to podcasts because we get to think of what we're going to say next when you're. No, but
has that ever been you, right? Has it ever been you with your husband, with your kids, with your right? Of course, it's not. And so I think people look at it and think, oh my gosh, that's not. Yeah, hello, we all do it.
Yeah,
I think it happens more often when it's a defensive conversation too. Like if you're trying to tell me something I'm not sure I want to agree with, I'm quickly coming up with in my brain the rebuttal versus truly listening to what you have to say, because I think we're on opposite sides of the net or something, you know.
Yeah, I think so. Yes, and I think that one of the strategies, one of the tools or techniques that we found also is just that everyone says, you know, before you say something, take a breath. Okay, well, that's good. But the distinction here is reacting versus responding. If you get a invitation in the mail to some party, gala, whatever it is, it says RSVP. That doesn't mean react, please. It means respond, please. So you have a chance to think about it. Am I available? What's going to happen? Do I have the time? Can I get to that spot? All of those technical things, and you think about those, and then you respond. Yes, I can come. No, I can't come. So that's response versus reacting when we hear something and we automatically react. And the distinction is that reaction has nothing to do with now. Reaction has to do with the past. Reaction has to do with a conditioned reaction that you're going to put forward. I was in the military and I was happy to serve, and I served. And one thing that they taught you, the main thing that was taught in basic training, was how not to respond. It was how to react. Military does not want you to think about this. You want to follow the orders and react. And I'm not casting any aspersions on military. Love it. Thanks for all the people who are serving.
And thank you for your service.
This idea of responding versus reacting when we're in a conversation, even if someone is saying something you don't agree with or like, just take a moment and respond to it as opposed to reacting, because the reacting doesn't get us anywhere in a conversation.
And it's really about being present. Right. So when we look at this, so when we talk about 4 rhythms, we say, okay, in the rhythm of respect, we show up, we're present, right? We're listening. I mean, that's really about what happens when we're in a space of respect, right? Period. It's very simple. From that place, so now think about that in terms of your team at home and your team at work. Right. So now all of a sudden there's this space of the door's open for a conversation versus the door's not open. There's something that doesn't feel safe. Right. Learning sort of what that means and what all that does for people is it helps to build trust. So when we work with corporate teams, entrepreneurial teams, families, whatever the case, as we go in, the exercises that we do are truly around what did you hear? How are you listening? How does that sound? Because what happens next is really about the responsibility of communicating clearly. So now we've held someone's attention by respecting them and being present. Now we move into responsibility. And oh, by the way, first we're respecting ourselves, right? The environment, knowing the agenda, doing your homework, standing in that. then stepping into responsibility. And from there, we get to be clear with our communication. Because if we're not clear with our communication, here's a quote. You ready? Expectations without agreement create premeditated resentment every time. So if we're coming in from a place of communication and I am not clear with you about what I'm expecting for a project that's completed in excellence or a by when date, you don't have all the information and you might be thinking it's due in 4 days and I might have in my head, I'd like it in 2.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So all of a sudden there's no need for that conflict, but there it is. And it happens with spouses all the time. It happens with partners. It happens in business. It is a constant thing. And what we forget is to align people with the clarity of vision and message and assignments.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sometimes Maris comes down and thinks that the dishes should have been done, and I haven't done them. But I wasn't aware that it was my responsibility to do it. We hadn't made an agreement.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, this is just an example because we have a pretty strong agreement on all these sort of things.
He does them all the time, really.
And in many cases, we do things for each other that are not expected, and we call that just another way to make love.
Mm-hmm.
So we do those things and say, I took out the trash. Oh, I thought I was going to do it. I'm just another way to make love. Thanks.
Yeah. And while that's less the business side than that, I mean, it is because we also work together. So we're a couplepreneur. We're also executives in the leadership space. So when you think about it, now take that thought into your team or into your family.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So the notion of someone, a leader coming in and doing something nice, sending an email communication that says, hey guys, you know what? I just saw we were up in the, whatever the case is, and our sales went up. What? Kudos, team. That's phenomenal. And then the next day there's, candy and donuts or whatever it is. I mean, because those are unexpected and those small things build respect and trust, right? So responsibility, that piece around expectations is a big one. And we do a lot of coaching and experiences around this expectations piece and the importance of the clarity around that.
So it's a good thought to remember. Expectations without agreement create premeditated resentment.
Mm-hmm.
I want to do that.
No, and on the line of resentment, and this can work both in relationships or also in your work environment. One of the things my husband actually taught me very early in our relationship that I'm very grateful for, because I was 28 when I met him, so I was still young. I'm still young in my head, but still young. And he taught me that, we're on the same team, and that if I could do both of us a favor in the early beginnings, because, I was young and I still was learning about good communication. And so sometimes my feelings would get easily hurt if he would say or do something that seemed like it wasn't, as loving as I wanted it to be. And he said, well, hang on, assume the best of me. Always assume the best of me, knowing for sure I'm going to say some stupid things going forward, I promise, but assume the very best of me, that I always, have you and our team at the best light possible. So don't assume the worst of me. And so that came into play with when I started to say, oh, what you mean to say is, because I remember that he adores me and he's always on my team. And it does really work like magic, because I remember a specific day on a very hot summer day, he had been outside working. Something wasn't working right. Maybe the lawnmower or something wasn't working the way he wanted it to. I had a girlfriend over and we're just chatting while I wash dishes. And he comes in and says something not mean or rude, just short. And I turned to him and I smiled and I said, I can see this is happening, but I think what you meant to say to me was, I threw a compliment in there, something about you hot, wonderful, gorgeous wife who's washing the dishes. I would like XYZ, right? That might not work in the workplace. That could get you in trouble. But then, he laughed and he kissed me and he said, yes, that's exactly what I meant to say. And he went out with a better attitude and a cold glass of water. And, because he was tired and hot and cranky. And so they went back out to do his thing. And my girlfriend was like, how did you do that? That was like magical. I'm like, oh, I've been doing that for years with him and the kids. It works really well. So instead of getting mad and having a big fight in front of a friend and everyone being embarrassed and all the things, which I could have gone down that road, and I probably would have, if it were day one of our marriage, I did it without even thinking. I think that's the other thing to know is you start to do this without even thinking. So when a teammate or a coworker brings to you a problem or a frustration that's happened yet again, gently reminding them that we're on the same team and let's look at this again, and helping them understand better ways to communicate, I think is really key.
Well, it comes one from the inside out, but also from the top down. So if you're a supervisor, if you're an executive, if you're a parent, a spouse, a friend, whatever that looks like, how we communicate is really important, because it's also, we communicate in a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
You have children, and both of them are likely do not respond in the same way to your communicating to them in the same way. All of them, right? I forgot. The reality is that's the case for all of us. That is the case for all of us. And so just because we're working in the same environment, we live in the same environment, we're being raised in the same environment, does not mean we respond in our environment in the same way. And so understanding the who we are operating with, right? Knowing love languages as a couple, yes, that's very important. Yes. Okay. So, but equally important is taking that into the workplace. In the workplace, is Sally on my team, does she respond best to my giving her positive feedback? Okay. Okay, great. Does Octavia on my team respond more to that? Or does she respond more to FaceTime with me, where I can give her 15 minutes to just be seen once a week? Okay, got it. You see how I'm segmenting out leadership qualities so that they know who their teams are. And the likelihood that Xavier on my team is remotely going to be communicating the way Sally or Octavia are, they might be in the same bucket of style, but Xavier may need me to come to him with lots of details because he's the analytical mind on my team. So I might need to come to him with the same information, maybe with an approach that's more in a schedule or a detail, right? So it really matters to understand who your team is, no matter where they are, but first to know your style and how you fit.
And their styles.
Yes, to meet them where they are. Yeah. So that's really, respect and responsibility. Do you want to continue? Would you like to ask us other questions about those?
No, I think we've really covered those two pretty well. And you have 4 R's, so we should probably hit the other 2, because I do have some other questions for you.
Okay.
Well, I'll talk a little bit about reframing. Reframing is this idea that in this spirit of reframing, we're not limited by what's in the past, and we lead with gratitude. In reframing, we lead with gratitude. So something may have happened in the past that was difficult, but first we get to go back and reframe it and find the pieces of that we can be grateful for. And you can always find those moments, no matter what it is, how tragic or how difficult or challenging it was. There is something there to be grateful for. So it's not as though we're being Pollyannish about it, but we are looking at our past and reframing it, and our present and reframing it to build something. I had this amazing opportunity to be with one of the Apollo astronauts, Captain Eugene Cernan, And we were at his home, and it was just the two of us, and we were having drinks, and he was telling me about he was the last man to walk on the moon. Well, that's pretty cool. And after I asked all my silly layman questions about, where do you go to the bathroom and all that sort of stuff, after we got that out of the way, he shared something very profound with me. And essentially what he was doing was reframing. He shared that his vision from 250,000 miles away from the surface of the moon of Earth was very different than those of us standing down here in the trees. He said he didn't see any borders. He didn't see any boundaries. He didn't see any differences. It's one planet, one blue marble, as we all became aware of. And that is such a powerful idea about reframing. It's a looking back, and it's all generally looking back and reassessing and thinking about perspective and thinking about point of view.
And there's always going to be Goliath, right? The old biblical story. There's always going to be Goliath popping up. There's always going to be a moment. I think what's interesting about reframing, in a lot of ways, reframing starts the process of this intense growth, because it offers reframing and resilience really offer these amazing breakthroughs, because you're shifting your mind. Also, very often, mindset's critical here, because what we're telling ourselves, right? What we're telling ourselves, whether or not we respect ourselves, whether or not we're standing in responsibility, whether or not I'm good enough. I can't get that job because so-and-so has this degree. Oh, I'm never going to be able to make that happen. And that was me. And I absolutely self-sabotaged myself through a number of different huge opportunities because I didn't have the confidence to be able to let go of what was holding on to me in fear of not good enough. So when I look at those situations and I look at reframing, and we talk about triggers. People talk a lot about triggers. Mm-hmm. And the fact in a reframing space is that when we're reacting to something, and Ken talked earlier about it, comes from the past, we are literally, something from the past is literally tapping us on the shoulder going, uh-oh, remember me?
Alert,
Hang on, remember me? So you have two options. You can yank hold of it and say, yep, come with me, I'm all in. Or you can face it. So I'm going to give you another tip and tool here. Face it. Face it is freely acknowledge current emotion. Mm-hmm. So whatever's coming up for you in that moment, that reaction, that moment that says, I see you, I recognize you, and you don't have a place here. And that's when we get to choose and say, I see you, I respect you, but you do not serve me, and push it away. And in reframing, that's where gratitude comes in to say, I'm so grateful for what I learned from this experience. And look, in the moment, I went through the Northridge earthquake with my then husband of 11 months, pre my life with Ken. And when I went through that earthquake, we were so sure, there was no question. We had said our goodbyes to each other. We knew very clearly we were not going to survive this. And we held each other and said, I love you. And that was it. And when all was said and done, what we knew in the end was, thank God we weren't finished on this earth. And that changed my life. It changed how I lived my life after that, in a space of gratitude. And so now we coach on having a gratitude practice for you, your family, your team every morning, coming into work with it, doing it with your family. And we actually can give you a link to a free gratitude practice guide. If you guys would like to use that, we'd love for you to have it. And, it's really important to have a gratitude practice, because when you start your day like that, that starts the rhythm of your day with a space of love and appreciation for yourself, for waking up. Nothing's assumed, right? And for all the challenges you might be facing that day, that's okay too. Because that way, when you get home at night and you've conquered the day and it's been amazing, you get to be grateful for that too. So you kind of bookend it, and it really shifts everything. Then during the day, when you're feeling stress, you can go back to that moment of gratitude and say, hang on, take a breath, breathe in gratitude. Okay, next. It really makes a difference.
Yeah. So in our family, we do, we've been pretty consistently praying over one another for protection and appreciation. So we'll say a prayer of both protection and something we appreciate about the other person we're praying over to send them off. And then the other thing we do is the three things. My husband and I started it when we were dating, and we've passed it on to our children even, where he'll tell me three things randomly that he loves about me, and I'll tell him three things I love about him. And it really, it makes you pay better attention. Like when I'll never forget one. I mean, he's told me so many amazing things that he loves about me, but one of them was, when we were at the beach the other day with the kids. Well, I was standing behind you, just watching you play with the kids, and the sun was hitting your hair just the right way. It was so beautiful. And so the fascinating thing is, it causes us to pay attention to one another while we're out and about, and we tuck those little golden nuggets away in our brain, and because we're saving them to bring to each other when we do our three things thing that we do, so
that's a perfect segue, because what you're really doing is, our fourth relationship rhythm is resilience. And what you're doing when you do those sort of three things, which is beautiful, is you are putting into a bank account, you're putting into a relationship account, you are saving, as you said, you are saving those moments, which when it comes time, when you need resilience, those are what you're going to get to call upon. It's a great idea to actually do something we call wallet words. Put down in your wallet just a list of things that maybe people have said good things to you. What if somebody's, just recall those things, put them in your wallet. And when you get that moment where resilience is really needed, look at that and say, hey, I stood up to this. I was there for that. I was there. And so those wallet words of resilience can help you, along with, as you were saying, the three things that you put into your relationship savings account. Is a great way to practice resilience. And so now that's the four R's: respect, responsibility, reframing, and resilience.
And I wanted to just tune in too about the importance of really understanding the power of relationships. So remember, we are in relationship with someone or something 24/7. From the time we wake up in the morning to the time we go to sleep at night, and through our sleep state, we're still in a relationship with ourselves. One life, one planet, one body. So that doesn't mean that we have a business life, a personal life, and a school life. One life. So the need for looking for balance, which keeps us teetering all the time, versus really connecting on all of these by weaving all of these rhythms together. And that gives us a prosperous and a thriving life. And when you start to recognize these are muscles that you flex, and you really experience that, and we recognize that the greatest currency we have is humanity, is each other. That is really our greatest currency. And so when we think about the relationship currency built with human capital, the importance of how we bank, how we support how people feel during the day, how people help us feel. And resilience, which I have learned the hard way, is really not for the lone wolfers, she says to herself as a coach. Resilience gets to ask for support and receive support, because we're never in it by ourselves. And the choices we make today, all day, determine our future. So we can choose to be respectful to ourselves, to each other, right? We can choose to be clear with our words and stand in our responsibility with accountability. We can choose to see it from another perspective, to step forward with appreciation and gratitude. And we can choose to seek and receive support, because in the end, our traumas and dramas don't define us at home or at work. We rise from them, and that's the gift that they are in our lives.
Yeah, and that's for sure. And so when you're doing these 4 R's and you're working with your groups, you're specifically really working with larger companies or mid-sized companies or companies who have teams with 5 or more people, or what does that typically look like for you?
Well, I mean, all companies eventually break down to teams in some way. So it really varies with companies, whether we work with a particular team or if it's a broader with the executive team or if it's an area of operations. So all of that. When we work with individuals, it's in essence, we're working with them as a team as well.
Private coaching. It's really more private coaching.
Yeah. So all of those things come into play, and it really, obviously, we tailor and understand what the goal of anyone we're working with before we step into something, so that we can tailor and manage it properly for every situation.
And what we're really focused on is, our book is the cornerstone, and our book is it's a fun read about 2 people who find their lives out of sync. And then they start to come into connection with the 4 R's and how it changes their lives. And for us, the biggest thing is to really work in large and small businesses to really ensure the culture is about connection, collaboration, to build confidence and trust. Because no matter what, whether or not you're at home or you're in a work setting or in an environment in school with a student, guidance and whoever it is, it doesn't matter. And so without those things, so our focus is really looking at all of what people call the soft skills, all the interpersonal skills, what it takes, being in communication, being respectful. That's how we really work with all folks. And sometimes they bring us in as a keynote, and then we'll do a workshop for them afterwards or work with them the next 2 days. Sometimes we work with them on their strategic planning, because at the core, the relationships are not necessarily working, getting everybody on the same page. And we really, one of our biggest things is we challenge anybody who's listening now, over the course of the next month, pick one relationship every week that you can evolve in some way through a lens of respect, responsibility, reframing, and resilience. One relationship a day for the next week. So, and you can even do it one relationship a week for the next month, as I said initially. Look at that and start with the relationship with yourself first, and write it down. Am I respecting myself? How am I respecting myself? Because the wins make a difference. How am I respecting myself? How am I disrespecting myself? How do I stand in responsibility at work and home? How am I, really pay attention, and don't do it from a place of judgment, an absolute place of curiosity and discovery. We don't stand in a place of judgment anymore. If you replace judgment with curiosity and discovery, there's no judging. You're just, oh, that's interesting. Huh. And it's interesting for us to watch how our corporate clients have navigated that and how much that's shifting their team energy. Wild.
And so what I heard you say is you can keynote with these kinds of companies. You can do live workshops with them in person. I'm imagining you also do some one-on-one, you mentioned briefly. I'm imagining some of that's virtual or in person. Do you do some virtual group workshops and work? I'm just trying to get everyone to have a feel of how you're interacting to resolve and work on these things we've discussed so far.
All the above.
Check. All the above. We also end up being as speakers on quite a number of summits, which is great. We're also writing in the Best You magazine, which has some great articles in it right now, all in the personal development space. And the best way to connect with us is really through our website, which is Segal Leadership Global. I'm sure you'll put it in the notes unless you want me to spell it here.
Yeah, it'll be in all of the comments and all of the custom articles and things we attach to the different places that you'll be finding this interview.
Cool.
Awesome. Thank you for that.
So that covers a lot of pieces. Now, I know we've given about a bazillion tips, but if you could just give a simplistic tip, what's the very first step? What's the first launch off?
Well, let's look at it this way. If you're working with a team, now you for instance, have 7 children. Amazing. with you and your husband, you have a team, a baseball team.
Yeah.
There you go.
We also have 8 grandchildren. So.
Football team with some reserves, you know.
That's
So,
right.
so one of the coolest ways to work with a team is plan to have gatherings periodically, all the time, maybe weekly, and you ask 4 questions. And the 4 questions are, what's working?
Mm-hmm.
And when you ask what's working, you also celebrate what successes, what wins have we had? What have we experienced? Yay, that's working. We love it. Then you ask, what's not working? And not from a place of judgment, just what's not working?
Curiosity.
Well, the lawnmower broke down. Okay, we get to think about how that gets repaired. It's all about curiosity. What's not working? And the next thing is, what's in between? What's in the gap between what's working and what's not working? What's missing? What do we find in there that's missing in that gap that we can do something about? And then, and as a leader, the last thing you want to do is say, how can I support? How can I help you? What can I do to support you to get between what's working and what's not working? So those 4 questions, what's working, what's not working, what's in the gap, how can I support? Those are really a great thing to use as team building and family building, personal building, your own self. That's a tip we would leave.
Yeah.
Love that. And that's a great tip. And we're so excited that you're watching and following us. And if you have some ideas on how you communicate with your family or how you communicate with your team that have been working really great, we'd love for you to put all that in the comments, because we want to see and hear from you out there who are watching as well. Now, the next thing you're going to want to do while you're watching is press that share button, because we're going to start talking about the cause that's close to our guest's heart today. We started that from episode number 1. It's really important to share awareness. You could just inspire someone and be a hero with time, treasure, and talent just by hitting the share button. Also put in the comments the causes you care about, because you never know, you might inspire someone to give time, treasure, and talent to the cause you share also. So Ken and Maris, share with us a cause that is close to your heart.
Go ahead.
So we've got a number of them actually, and I think today I'll talk about financial literacy. And here's why. Because in the work that we do, we talk about what is your relationship with money, with time, with your faith, with your family. The whole notion of what is your relationship with is because we all come from a legacy from our past. So whatever is shaping your children right now, financial literacy for young people is so important. Let it be a tool that also supports you in your growth, because this is the big one. And it's okay that we've come to where we are from the legacy of our past. And if there's a paradigm that you get to shift, teach your kids early about financial literacy. And as an adult, you get to learn it as well. There's nothing that says we're too old to learn. So financial literacy is a big one.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that's wonderful. So hit that share button, because also get ready to put in the comments your favorite book. We're going to ask our guests today to share a book that inspired their personal life or helped them grow their business. I know you've read a book or 2 out there, and we would love to see the books that are your favorites and that you love and why. Tell us in the comments. Ken and Maris, you got some books that inspired your personal life or helped you grow your business?
Yeah, I would say one particular book, well, there's many books, but one particular book in the past number of years, read it a long time ago, and it's fresh on my mind because I started rereading it again yesterday. And it's a book written by Don Miguel Ruiz called The 4 Agreements.
It's a good one.
Agreements, which is the Toltec wisdom, the ancient Toltecs. And Don Miguel Ruiz was one of those protectors and in that lineage of Noggles who protected that wisdom. And he brought it forward in his book, The 4 Agreements. And really, it kind of goes so hand in hand with what we're talking about, because reframing, if you've gone through whatever your legacy is and whatever you're building, you get to be in agreement with it. It brings up the whole expectations without agreement. It really dovetails through all of our work. And I just think as a powerful book.
And one of our favorite lines is being impeccable with your word, right? That comes from the 4 agreements, and that speaks directly to responsibility and clear communication. So yeah, that's a good one.
Great book.
I love that you're asking us this. So for me, I'm going to go completely another end of the spectrum. Who knows the Dr. Seuss book, Oh, the Places You'll Go?
Oh, I do. I have so many children. Are you kidding? I know every Dr. Seuss.
Well, yeah. So I think I've given that to every college student, every graduating high school student, I don't even know what, every new mom, I'm pretty sure I should own stock in the company. And here's why. The choices we make today determine our future, right? What's so amazing about that book is that it opens up the doors to all kinds of choices and possibilities. One choice may not be the ultimate choice that you make. It's a choice, though, and it's part of your journey. So the idea of being in relationship to change, which is constant, thank you, resilience, right? The notion of coming to a fork in the road and learning how to trust your gut, trusting your instinct deep inside, not letting the head run the roost, but allowing your heart to lead so that you're in a head and heart space. And so that book to me is just a really cool guide for life at every aspect of your life. And someone gave it to me when I was going through my divorce. And I had read it before many times and given it to other people, but never had my own. And here's the truth. I sat down and read it to myself out loud in front of the mirror in my bra and underwear. In my apartment, I kid you not. I wanted to see myself. I wanted to be with myself. And it was really one of the first times that I was sitting with myself in a space of vulnerability and acceptance. It was just wild. It was crazy. And that book was just this important space for me in that moment,
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
I'm a big believer in, the only makeup I'm wearing is a little lip gloss for the boost of the media here. So I'm not a very vain person. I don't spend a lot of time in the mirror. I don't spend a lot of time with makeup and things, but I am learning the value of spending time with yourself in the mirror and having conversations with yourself. It sounds a little crazy maybe, but I think there's something to be said when you hear your voice and then you see yourself saying, it's like when you look someone in the eyes and you make a commitment, you shake their hand. If you do it in the mirror, you have a bit more of that impact than just say, okay, I'm going to promise myself XYZ, it's a different kind of promise when you look yourself in the eyes and make that promise.
Yeah. And respecting yourself and respecting yourself. Because I think that's really important in the work that we do when we do these sessions as transformational workshops. There's a lot of mirror work that goes on here. And because we're also, many of us, and you just said it, you alluded to it, many of us have been facing ourselves for the first time in how many recent years, right? And sometimes that may not be so pretty. It's a little bit messy, and that's okay. You had something to say that I might have cut short.
I was just going to say that this idea of mirror work is actually, we do it all the time.
Yeah.
Because everywhere we look in the world, it's a reflection of us.
We're each other's mirrors.
The people we are, what we hear from other people is a reflection of us. What we see in the world is a reflection of what we see in the world. It's not what the world is, it's what we see. So we're constantly in this reflective mirror atmosphere, and sometimes we forget it. And standing back in front of a glass mirror is a good reminder.
Well, and I've managed and trained sales teams across the country. And one of the things I've always said is, because I still do a lot of phone calls. I use the phone for more than just photographs. I know it's a camera, but it's also a phone. And I call people, and I have conversations on the phone where we don't see each other. And for that reason, I have right at my desk a mirror all the time, because I always teach people, if you're going to have a phone conversation, especially a business phone conversation, you want to make sure, or a hard conversation, it could be a relative or a family, you want to make sure you can see yourself while you have it, because your face gives you clues to your tone. What are they hearing? The energy they're receiving, because energy comes across the phone. If I'm smiling and talking to you on the phone, you can hear my smile. And if I'm not, you can hear that too, so.
Well, I've been in recording studios, making music all my life. And one of my best producers always used to say, he's from England, and we'd be in the studio about to sing a vocal, and he would say, "Corners up."
That's right.
Because you can hear the smile in your voice. Obviously, if we're singing a sad song, we wouldn't be smiling, but so corners up was a great thing, great way to look at it, exactly what you were saying.
And also, what's really important here, especially is to think about is that how you're feeling inside is how you're showing up. Really hear me when I'm saying that. People will treat you how you're showing up. People will likely treat you how you're already feeling, and you don't even know why they're doing it. It's the energy piece of it, right? So again, let's go back to the notion of setting the rhythm and the tone of our day, of our hour, whatever it is. Take the time to prepare. Know who you're spending time with. Meet them where they are. Be sure you're in check inside with your strength in respecting your space. Because in the end, what you want for someone else is what they want for themselves and for you. And that is that if you're in the same room together, even in a hard conversation, you're still looking for an outcome that will serve both of you, no matter what.
Yeah.
And that's really, you may think that's not what you want. You may be coming out swinging because you're angry and all that. But in the end, people want to be heard, valued, connected. It's the truth. We're all connected as humans first, which means we are the beautiful human capital. We are also all feeling, touching people who want the same things. By birthright, we get to be respected, valued, cared for, fed, safe. By birthright, everybody on this planet.
Yeah, and I think showing up for each other to help us all reach those gifts, that is a great way to live our lives. So we've got to talk about some books that inspired you. Now we sprinkled in a little bit that you're authors yourselves, but 22 books. OMG! Tell us a little bit more in more depth about what led you to write your most recent book and what got you involved in these other 20 plus books. So talk to us about the book world. And if you're an author out there, put your books in the chat too. We want to hear them in the comments. We want to see them everywhere. Tell us who you are. You never know when we might feature an author randomly who put something in the comments. So you want to get featured, go ahead and share your books with us too. So Ken and Maris, tell us all about the world of books.
Well, I would tell you that our book started with the manifestation. Started with repetition of a manifestation. And Maris came up with this initially was that by a certain date, we would have a best-selling book.
And be on a TEDx stage.
And be on it. Yeah. Yes, and various other things. Now, mind you, we had never written a book. And mind you, as we started repeating this, and we said this for really a couple of months, I woke up one morning and said, you know what? If we're going to have a best-selling book, maybe we should start writing something. So we set out to start writing something. We had an idea. We worked on it. We went back and forth. We developed it. We developed it to a point where we could send it off to an editor to have a look at it. In that process, it didn't work out too well with the editor. We pulled it back and we said, look at us. We're at starting point. No sooner had we reached that point that another door opened.
1 month almost to the day.
And it opened for us to write a chapter in a collaborative book on personal development. So we said, okay, not knowing that literally the day of our manifestation, on this day, we will have a best-selling book and we will be in a certain place, in a specific place in the country, happened one day before we had set it in our manifestation.
It was crazy. I mean, it was really remarkable. And, you know, I think the notion of how the series really came to us too was, you know, it's amazing when you just kind of let it.
Mm-hmm.
Just let it. We spend so much time chasing, running, going, and doing versus just being in it and allowing it, because we don't trust necessarily what's possible. So we have to fix it. But if we just let a space, look at what opens up. And so this experience was pretty wild, because not only were we then invited into one book, but the series was 13 books, and it was supported. It was the Napoleon Hill Foundation. So the work is with an organization called Habitude Warrior, and this was a 13 book series. So if you know Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich identifies 13 steps to riches, basically. So we were then asked to be in 13 of these books as featured collaborative authors. So it was really remarkable, because, you know, with incredible leaders like Sharon Lecter, who wrote, you know, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and Exit Rich, and all of her work in financial literacy and that whole piece. And, you know, Alex Stern, who is Constant Contact, is one of our friends in the book. So the amazing people who joined us in these series was phenomenal. So that's 13. And that opened the door to the rest of them, which now has turned into 21. And each of them have their own celeb angle. Each of them have their own, 33 authors giving their perspectives on these topics: mentorship, leadership, honoring the work of Dale Carnegie in some of the series. It was been a magical process. And what's great about the collaborative book process is, if you haven't written and you want to step into that space, that's a great way to do it, because you can pay a price. They can also get you a ghostwriter. I mean, there are all kinds of ways to do it. And there's so many incredible organizations. But if you have specific interests, let us know. We're happy to connect you with any of our folks who we know who are doing these series. And it was great. And it built our confidence. It built our credibility. So, you know, there are some people who would look at Amazon and say, oh my gosh, bestseller status. Okay, I get that. But here's the reality. When you have a book and you're in a book with other people, and it does get bestseller status, and you do get your ratings, all of that still matters. It doesn't get to be poo-pooed, right? It's really remarkable, because incredible humans are bringing their message forward. So we're honored that we're featured in 22 books. It's been phenomenal. It built the discipline. I thought, thank you for saying that. The discipline piece of this is really true, because just being on it. We've been writing a chapter every other month for the last 3 years, basically. And then our solo, so it gave us the confidence to write our solo book, which is RFactor. And that's really about identifying and finding the 4 universal rhythms for leading prosperous relationships, because we really believe that the next evolution in our human story is mastering connected relationships. And the only way to do that is to live in the rhythm of the 4 R's, and to create that culture in your family and at work.
Well, you guys should be super proud of yourselves and all your accomplishments. I think it's really amazing. And I do believe that we're all energy, and that we're all connected. And every time I do something to improve myself, or you guys do something amazing, we all benefit in this really collective sort of way. A positive energy is pushed out to all of us when we win and we succeed together. So thank you for adding those accomplishments to the human collective on our marble as we're far away. I've enjoyed having you both so very much. I've enjoyed having you guys follow us and share with us the books you care about, and share your causes, and share your tips, and tell us what you think of what Ken and Maris are up to in the world. And, you know, reach out if your team needs some leadership support or communication support, because I know that you'll be pleased with the work that they do with you. Now, before we say goodbye, we always ask our guests to share a final piece of information or inspiration. So what do you have for us today?
Well, I would say the final piece of inspiration is always adapt a growth mindset. We can live in a mindset that limits us, or we can be in a growth mindset.
Yeah.
I've been around a few years, and I look forward to learning something new every day. I loved how you said you were an early adopter and for all the beta testing for new programs and new ideas, and that's great.
Yeah.
Because that growth mindset keeps building you and keeps adding to exactly what you said, your energy. It's a battery for your energy. It's powering that source inside you to keep that growth mindset. So I think that would be how we would leave you.
I love that.
I love that. And I'm just going to put a pin on that. The growth mindset from a head and heart perspective, right? So when we lead with our hearts and we trust that, our heads will follow. Most of us lead first with our heads. So we tend to crash when we do that, because then we're all up in there, versus trusting first and leading that way. Appreciating that life is going to be messy and it's okay. Better to embrace the mess than not to have had one in the first place.
Right. I love that. And I have to add to the growth mindset thing. I love you want to start with your heart, and then you're going to go with your growth mindset. And he mentioned how I'm constantly trying new things. Well, that's actually a trick. And if you are trying to make a big change in your life, and you are really taking bigger, or I used to play Mother May I. You took baby steps and giant steps. If you're trying to take these giant leaps, right, in your growth and your development, you need to try new things, because it teaches your brain to build new neural pathways more easily. If you're doing other different simple things, like for me, learning a software or driving a new way to a place I go to every day, but going a different way or whatever, that will help whatever else it is, the big thing you're trying to do new, in your growth and your neural pathway development. So had to throw that in there.
Well, I'm glad you did, because the more you step into discomfort, right, the more you're prepared for change down the road.
For sure.
I mean, it's the truth, right? The more, and okay, we all get a little complacent. There's nothing wrong with that. Don't be judgy all about it.
Yeah.
Fear and curiosity. How do I get out of this complacency? Okay, got it.
Yep. Do something new. So thank you again for being on the show. I hope you've had as much fun as we've had having you.
Love being with you, Jessica, and just so thankful that you're doing this and putting this out, as you said, creating that energy. You're putting that energy constantly into the world.
And the format, it's great.
And we need more of that. And that's the ripple effect that is going to affect our universe, our humanity. Thank you.
I love that. And you're so welcome. And you know what? If you're out there, you're thinking, hey, I want to be a part of that ripple. I want to be a part of that wave. Well, then reach out to us and our team, and we'll teach you how to get on the show. And until next time, everybody, I'm your host, as always, Jessica Koch. This has been another Profound Professionals. So until next time, everyone, be kind to yourselves and be kind to each other. Bye, everybody.